Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Today is November 20th, Tuesday, and welcome to Foxborough's Board of Selectmen meeting. I'll go through the agenda briefly. We have four public hearings scheduled for today. First one's at 7 o'clock. It's a liquor violation for Waxy O'Connor's. At 7:15, the school department is going to present one of the remaining, actually the remaining warrant article for the turf field for the December 11th meeting. 8 o'clock, we have a public hearing, a liquor violation for the CBS Scene Restaurant at Patriots Place. And 8:30, there's a public hearing continued for the Foxborough Mandarin located at 369 Central Street. At 9 o'clock, we have the fourth public hearing for the Bluefin Lounge located at the Bass Pro at Patriots Place. So it goes from 7 till 9. Linda, do you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So the 7 o'clock public hearing, before we discuss it, we'll read it into the record. You have that?
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, November 20th, 2012, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, pursuant to its licensing authority in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, annotated Chapter 138, Sections 23, 64, and 67, and all amendments thereto. The purpose of the hearing will be to review and discuss information concerning alleged violations of Chapter 138 that occurred at the Waxy O'Connor's, 121 Main Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts. All interested parties are invited to attend.
Okay, and if you recall at our last hearing, we planned on reading this into the record, and they had asked for an extension or a continuance until January 8th. I think that's what the day was.
I'll get you the exact date, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Did you guys you remember what?
January 8th.
It was January 8th.
It was,
Yeah.
I think it was.
And we set a tentative time at like 7:20 for it or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, January 8th is a Tuesday. Right.
Tuesday, yeah, so it'll be January 8th. So we can go in that direction, but is there counsel for Waxy's here? I don't see Frank.
Mm-mm.
January 8th, 7:30 p.m.
Okay.
So we did move to continue it, so.
We move to continue it, so. So we'll leave the meeting open. A motion to continue to January 8th.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Linda and seconded by Lorraine. All those in favor?
All right.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, did we want to do any citizens' input tonight? I don't think there is any, but I didn't know it was, it's not on the agenda, I don't know. I'm asking, not telling.
Yeah, no, usually we do, but I think it was bang, bang, bang to go through these. But at the same time, is there anyone that would want to add anything for citizens' input? Okay, now we've got 10 minutes. Well, the warrant article is not a public hearing, so we could start that now. And we'll run that till 8 o'clock. Is that fine with the board?
Yep.
Start a little early?
Yep.
And I'm going to recuse myself. I may participate with the school department. So, Mark, you want to take over as chairman?
Sure, great. Hi, you guys want to come forward?
Timing is everything.
That's right.
Love you rolling chairs. Challenging.
I could have hurt myself badly.
I know everybody knows you, but your names to the record, please.
Yes, Debbie Spinelli, Superintendent of Schools, also town resident, 3 Michelle's Way. Do you want to go right down?
Business manager, public schools.
And I'll introduce myself. It's Jim DeValis, but on this, I'm running the Turf's Up nonprofit fundraising group for the turf field.
Okay. Who would like to start tonight?
Well, I also want to introduce Karen Slaby, who's also here from the Turf's Up.
Karen, you want to jump up on the table? It'd be easier for everybody to hear you if you do speak.
Yeah. So my understanding is you invited us here because this is a joint community and school department project, sponsored by the school committee for the warrant article for the December special town meeting. So this is, I think you know by now, I think you've talked about it a couple of times, but just to give the public a review, this started about 4 years ago with the Turf Sup Committee. It wasn't started by the school department. So they started a community group, fundraising. Long story short, she can give you the longer story, but they secured an NFL grassroots grant of $200,000, and then they stopped fundraising when the economy kind of went south a little bit. So what has happened in very recent history is that the Turf Sup Committee approached the school department to see if we were interested in partnering with them to bring the project forward. This is obviously a project of mutual interest, say, where the community group wants a community field to be used by all different groups in the community. On the school side, our primary interest was that we don't have an on-site athletic facility. So as everybody knows, it's historically, since the high school was built 40 years ago, that most of the athletics occurs over at the Ahern Middle School still. So I think it was kind of a joint interest and pursued as such. So the school committee is sponsoring the warrant article for the December special town meeting. And we've been working with the town finance folks to pursue different funding options, and different funding options that have been put forward. The school committee got behind one option, and now things have changed a little bit, so we take the guidance from the town. And last night at our school committee meeting, with the new possible outline of the funding, they also voted to continue forward with that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I think more of the details about the project itself would be best you hear from the Turf Sup folks.
Okay, great.
I know we've probably talked about this. You want me to go through a quick where it's at and the little
We've
bit
got
of
an
the
hour,
details?
so.
All right. This project started, as Deb said, about 4 years ago, and it was pretty much a grassroots, and it was a bunch of coaches that were dealing with the youth sports that got together, and the parents. And what's happened over the years is you've got a sport like soccer, or that used to be one season, is now is 2 and 3 seasons. You've got lacrosse, where it used to be non-existent, 3 and even 4 seasons. And if you look at some of the young programs, each age level have 2 or 3 or 4 teams deep now, in boys and girls. So from just a very simple reasoning that there's just not enough fields in Foxborough. And Foxborough, over time, has fallen behind some of the surrounding towns in keeping up with a number of fields, and certainly, only one of the few communities that don't have a turf, and one of the only communities that don't have a field at the high school. So putting that all together, we started a 501(c), a nonprofit group. As Deb said, we raised money over time. We initially came to the Board of Selectmen and said, before we bring this forward, is this something that the board would be interested in? And at that time, I think we had ambitions of raising $1 million. But I think our first mailer went out just before the holidays, when everything dumped, and we were almost embarrassed to send it out. And we certainly didn't reach out to the businesses because it was dire straits at the time. But nonetheless, we went to the selectmen, went to the school committee and said, should we go forward? We got their blessing because it would be on school property. We solicited the one organization with the help of the NFL, with the help of Robert Kraft, and we got a $200,000 grant. At the same time, we were reaching out small fundraisers. We had wiffle ball tournaments, and we had a band playing, all different stuff. We raised about $60,000. And then we also got what we call in-kind donations. For instance, Tree Tech is going to clear the trees at no cost, and that we put a price tag on that. So when you add up all the bits and pieces and all the soft costs, my profession, what I do during the day is I'm a civil engineer, and I've for years been designing it for a lot of schools around. That's what I do for a living. So I said I would add those services to the mix. Peter Glick, who doesn't have really kids in the program anymore, said he would do the same thing. He's a civil engineer. So add up those pieces, it's about $430,000 worth of cash, grants, and in-kind soft costs that we're going to put towards this. Couldn't get quite to the price tag, so we went to the school and said, well, can we put it together as a community project? Now, when we first started the project, we looked at where we could put the field. Karen, did you bring the board of the whole?
Yeah, it's on the bottom.
So I know the longer the project goes on, there's a lot of discussion of where it's going and how it ended up where and some of the decisions. But this board represents an analysis, an engineering analysis that we did of looking at all different locations in town. For instance, this is somewhere between the IGO school and the high school in that kind of Wynn Road trees. We looked at orientating it in different directions. We looked at putting it behind the high school, putting it in front of the high school, behind the high school. We went over to the Ahern and we looked at putting it inside the existing Ahern track where the high school uses now. We looked at putting it behind the Ahern where all the fields are, behind the classrooms. And then we even looked at putting it on the side of the Ahern where the soccer plays. And basically, although it could fit, and then we also looked down at Payson Road for a place to put it on Payson Road. All of these physically could fit, but we had a group together, and some of it was school members, facility directors, parents, engineers, and just volunteers that want to see it built. And we said, where does it make most sense? And we looked at the topic of criteria, master planning, location of the high school, because that was critical to some of the high school needs, location to the youth sports, issues with lighting, bleachers, future track, parking. A big thing is we did not want to eliminate a field because we're doing this additional field, and if it takes place over another field, you don't get as much benefit from that. So that was a big consideration. Disruption during construction to the neighbors of the school, and then overall cost. So hands down, the location of the high school came up number one, and mostly talking to the high school, as Deb said, it's the only school around that doesn't have a field at the high school. And for the athletes, but people that want to go out and use it, a track and all that stuff, it just made sense. It saves the issue of busing the kids from the high school to the different fields. So no matter how we looked at it, it always came back to the high school. Now, so when we got the grant, we had planned for it to be behind the high school and we went in front of the school. The more that school looked at it, it makes sense to go in the back for some reasons, but it makes more sense to go in the front for other reasons, because if it's going to be a community field, you have access in the front where the baseball fields are. You have access from the IGO school, you have access from the booth, you have the access at the high school, and it's kind of a central location. If you wanted to walk down to the Cindy's Jewelers or grab a sandwich or something, it's a little more amenable than having it way in the back. Having it in the back also brought up other concerns of, there's one way in, but the loop road in the back with sidewalks and stuff was undersized for the utilities to handle that. So we kind of switched gears and we said we'll put it in the front. So this plan here represents what we're planning and some of the cost estimates that come out of this. If you come up the high school drive, this is the high school, this is South Street. As you come up, there's that main parking lot that was just redone. And over here is the baseball field and the softball field. What we're proposing is to put the turf field here, take those fields, orientate them over the bleaching fields in the back. So you'd have a full-size baseball field, makes room for a practice field. The softball field gets shifted over. There's room for another practice field. And if you can just imagine, this is a level area now, so you can kind of mix and match these scenarios, and that's what seemed to fit very well. This gravel parking area was, when they were redoing this area, we outlined an area that they could put that bituminous concrete, that the pavement, and leveled it out. So that's already begun and under the way. So you get over here, what's left would be the turf field and lighting. We're showing a track and we're showing the bleachers, and that's really just a master plan. The last thing we wanted to do was put something in there, and then 10 years later or whenever someone gets the ability to put in a bleachers and a track for the high school, you're not ripping things up and moving it. So from a master plan, that makes sense. And then what's left over, there's another practice field. The existing tennis courts stay where they are. And between the practice fields, you're going to accommodate the high school football, the high school field hockey. Tennis is still there. And the beauty of this field is it's an additional field. So the high school will still have to play where they're playing at the Ahern, because they don't have the bleachers and the accommodations for that. So they would stay there. The lacrosse would stay at Payson. Soccer plays out and back there, but this is an additional one. So if you look at the youth sports, it's swing space for them. Their practices, can happen earlier in the season. It's a safer environment. They don't get canceled and try to reschedule. And what we're seeing in my industry anyways, the places that have turf fields, they're able to get out there in March, April, May, where we're still, like the baseball team is still practicing in the gym. And the lacrosse team and the soccer playing are practicing indoors, so when they get outside, they've already lost several weeks or a month where other teams have already, that have the turf field. So that's one of the clear benefits. For the high school, obviously you can walk out, eventually, hopefully someday they'll have the track and the bleachers, but right away, every sport can play there, with the exception of varsity football. But the freshman football, the junior varsity football, field hockey, this is a multi-purpose field that will have the ability to handle soccer, lacrosse, football, and field hockey. The striping is such that if your kids or you've seen the other field, they're different stripes, and you get used to it very quick. You know, people say, well, you know, the kids are using these every day, all day, as it is right now, just not in Foxborough. So people are already adapted to it, they're using it. And for some reason, Foxborough's kind of fallen behind with the programs at the state level. A lot of the schools that I do, where we rip down schools because of age, when we redevelop it, we get, the program consists of a full athletic program. So I think because Foxborough didn't go in that direction, they had a nice maintenance program for the school. That's a positive. The negative is you don't get the benefit of the federal and state programs to do the athletic field. So that's kind of where we're in the predicament. So the one thing I wanted to make clear, it's not a grab to do everything, but it is some smart planning to say put it someplace where it makes sense in the future, so it's not undersized. It's not going in a place where you have to move it later. So then we came, you know, going back and forth with the school department, and I think this program fits them well. It fits the youth program well. There are a lot of questions that are being raised by the advisory committee. We've spoken to them several times. I'll admit they're not in love with it, but we're giving them the information, and hopefully we find some type of a medium on that. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we realize it is an expense, as equal as it is an expense. It is an asset, and there's a benefit to that, and there's a lot of benefits to the kids. So that's what we're hoping you'd consider tonight.
Karen, do you have anything to add?
No, Jim pretty much summed it up.
So, now, Randy, are you here to go over like?
If there are any questions on the
Bill?
finance funding plan, I'm happy to speak to that.
Hey, Bill, did you want to start with that?
Sure. I got an extra one. I think you all know that basically the original intent or hope was that there would be funding available for not only the town hall project, but the turf field that wouldn't require, you know, additional taxation, a debt exclusion or anything of that nature. After, and Randy can speak to this as well, obviously after kind of projecting out the next 3 years, looking at the revenue sources we have, while we do have some sources that are in excess of potentially of budget requirements, not enough to cover these two projects. And so that's, you know, a shortfall that we can't deal with in the same way as we originally thought would come to us. As Jim said, of this, there's about $430,000 that comes through in kind or donations that are out there, plus the NFL grant, which does go away in the spring if we don't make a move going forward. The option that basically was then played out was that while the high school project has the balance of its funds in excess, just excess of $1 million currently, it could be used on a high school renovation of existing fields, as long as it's still done under the high school project. Not dissimilar to what we did when we did the Ahern. We rebuilt the bleachers, the field, and the track at the same time we did the Ahern. Under the same kind of funding source, which also was not part of the original project, but obviously was a community need at the time, and we were also fortunate enough to have the excess funds to be able to do it during that project. Beyond that, the school committee voted and agreed last night that they would come up with another $75,000 out of revolving accounts, the building rental account that we have. It will obviously pretty much drain that account at this point because we use $62,000 towards the track in the spring. But you know, we're comfortable we can move forward with our budgets with that 75. And then discussing with Randy the options from the town side, it would require the last $125,000 to come from the overlay surplus. And by putting that all together, we come up with the $1.6 million that's needed to put this project together. We admit this is phase one, as Jim had said. Phase two, if and when it were to happen, is another $1 million, actually another $1.8 million, to put in the bleachers, the track, and everything else that would go along with that, the concessions, the press box. But at least, even if phase two doesn't happen, phase one does provide ample amount of additional time on a turf field. It gives our kids the opportunity who are playing on turf fields in neighboring communities the ability to practice on a turf field, which they don't have today. So if they're going to go and play in Canton, a football game, they could practice on the turf field that we would have at our place at the prior to that game, and at least give them some experience on it. So we think this is a doable plan, but again, what we have said, and the school committee has said quite loudly last night, is that this article going forward basically will be asking for $125,000 at town meeting for the overlay surplus, but a yes or no vote to it is a yes or no vote to the project. So the school committee is not looking to spend the $1 million if the town says no to the $125,000. If the town supports the $125,000, then that's how the funding source would be used. So we're laying it all out, making it very crystal clear to the taxpayers of where all the sources of funds are coming from, the fact that phase one does what it does, and phase two would do, another portion of it if that were to happen down in the future. So I think at this point, we're trying to put everything on the table. There's absolutely, to our minds, nothing that's, the taxpayers won't know about if they vote to go forward with this. And as I said, whether phase two happens or doesn't happen, phase one is a big enough plus to the schools and to the community that we think it's worth putting it in front of them.
So for clarification, phase one would be moving the baseball fields, building, if you could go to the board again, Jim?
Yep.
Sure.
Make it very clear for everybody at home, so know what they're talking about at town meeting, we don't have to,
Okay. This might help a little bit.
okay?
Here's an aerial. Just don't want to take care. Okay, South Street, as you come up on South Street, you have this baseball field and you have the softball field,
Yes,
tennis courts, and this parking.
Yep.
So the baseball field, the softball field would be taken and put here, okay?
okay.
And right now, there's a gravel area that's already there for parking.
And those are all the areas where Tree Tech would,
Yeah,
Yes.
Tree Tech would clear all this out and
okay?
pull up. the
Because
stuff, so.
I'll be honest with you, I thought you were gonna use that other field to the right. That
Yeah,
was
this-
already cleared, but
This
that's,
field to the right is not high school property, it's state property, and I think there's a long time lease,
Yeah.
either with the school or
The town.
the town.
The
okay.
town leases that from the
So
state.
there's a good
for
amount of trees
Seafield.
that need to be cleared. So
Yes,
Tree
sir.
Tech's doing a great service to the town, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, they're doing about, I think talking to Andy Felix and calculating the acreage, is about 5 acres back there. It's about $20,000 that he's donating
Okay,
to do that.
thank you.
So these fields would go back here, and then the turf field would go here, and then this area would turn into a practice field
Okay.
for the football and the.
And that's phase one,
Correct.
With
So-
fencing
With fencing
and
and
lighting,
right?
and that's it.
And all the infrastructure on the ground so you're saying all the infrastructure for the future would be already underground? Is that what you're saying when you say you're,
Yeah, on phase one, most of the infrastructure, there's a substantial drainage system below it, and we'll run conduit. Talking with representatives from National Grid, who really don't love me at this point, but they're answering the phone. There's power that's coming up here, so we'd bring a line, put the lights, and then this really would be grass on phase one, all of this. So this practice field would get a lot larger for here. You could actually do a full width football field. If and when phase two comes, then that practice field would get cut back to here, and you'd have bleachers here, or maybe on, a lot of schools are doing bleachers on one side now. That's not, and actually, Dad asked me if and when the time came, we'd look at that and we'd help you out with that as well. So the bleachers, the 8-lane track, and little amenities to the track would be phase two.
so it'd be more hospital to have bleachers on both sides in the future, is what you're saying to us?
We all get along
This is-
well.
So when Mansfield comes visiting, we can, they don't have to
I
bring
think
their lawn
people do it
chairs.
one of either way, so that's not really a
Yeah.
big ticket item, but whichever way is
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my point was, this is concept right now, it hasn't been designed, it's just a.
So
state
is the
track.
track around it part of phase one?
No.
So just so we're clear,
Yeah.
for
field,
everybody.
Lights, and then fencing, which we'll take up for phase two, but, you don't want people walking across, so you gotta put a 4-foot chain link fence around it just to keep it separate. So,
Great.
but very modest.
Okay. Is everybody clear on that?
Could I just point out one thing? Do we not have the concession stand somewhere right here with bathrooms?
Oh, I'm sorry, concession stand right
Oh,
here. Yeah.
okay.
And again, that's concept, but, something, and I think we wanted to talk with Lisa Downs on, the baseball, so we're not taking over their stuff, maybe we put the money into that one or something, I don't know, but at least concept, there's something, if someone wanted to get a snack, or a lot of times, if there's admission for, one of the questions, once you put this in, what does it cost to maintain it? A lot of towns have adult leagues, women's soccer, men's soccer, and you want a gate with, tickets or something like that, so there's a lot of additional stuff that could be handled with a little concession stand.
Okay, great. And Bill, one more time, you can just review the funding source so everybody completely understands.
And again, like Randy to probably, also chime in on it, but basically, we're looking at the 430 between donations, in-kind services, and the NFL grant. We're looking at $1 million, that's the current balance on the high school project, which the town has already bonded and appropriated. $75,000 from one of the schools' building revolving account, and the balance, which is $125,000, to come from the overlay surplus.
So really, at town meeting, this is Article 6, correct?
Correct.
We're looking at basically allowing the school, which the school committee voted 5-0? Is that how they?
3-0, 'cause
Well, last night there were only 3 people present.
Oh, to 3-0.
Yep.
To
But they had
support-
previously already voted to support that warrant
So
article.
to support it, so that the money that was bonded for the schools, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to understand this fully, that was bonded for the schools will stay at the high school for additional alterations, basically in the fields.
Right.
Then you have $70,000+ from
We,
revolving account?
right, internally, we have a revolving account that when we rent our facilities, the balance in that is what basically we'd be using to put towards the field as well.
So to be clear, then 125,000 would be Article 6? Is that what's Article 6
Yes.
is gonna be? So we're just voting to borrow, not borrow, take from the transfer from the general fund, $125,000.
Correct.
I'm clear. Any other questions from the board?
What's the overlay surplus? Could you
Sure,
define that?
I can speak to that, Ginny. Thanks, Jim. Every year, we're required by state law to reserve a portion of taxation for two things: for tax exemptions that this town has granted historically, for a variety of different categories of folks who qualify for tax exemptions. And then we also are required to maintain an amount to cover any abatements that people apply for with regards to, adjustments to their taxes. So we're required to annually, reduce how much we make available for budgets by this overlay amount. Typically for us, it runs about $440,000, half of that typically for exemptions, half of that for overlay. But as time moves on, we settle tax cases, because there's typically usually, tax cases out there that we have to reserve for, whether they're at the state utility, state filings with the state by public utilities or locally. And then as time moves on, these cases get settled, and the amounts that are left in the overlay can be released by the Board of Assessors and then for reappropriation at town meeting. And so typically, we've scraped out overlay each year if we felt that there was enough in there with still being able to cover any risk that we had in any tax cases, and we released it to cover things like capital items or the once every 3-year costs and the triennial revaluation work, which is assessing work. So it's a traditional funding source for either capital or operating uses such as that.
So how much, if you take the 125,000, how much will be remaining?
For prior years, because you can't use the current year amount, for prior years after accounting for cases that we're currently aware of where the amounts might land, somewhere around 150,000 thereabouts.
Does that cover the revaluation cost?
Yes, there's another, we appropriated $60,000 for the current year budget as sort of a down payment, half of the cost of the revaluation, and then we'll be looking for, or just under half, looking for another $75,000 in this year's budget. So that's, I've taken that out of the number that I just quoted to you, less any amounts that we think we need in reserve for, plus another $75,000 that we had within that number that we would put forward towards next year's capital budget, because we were looking to take 200,000 out this year that I had identified. I think we could take 200 out to put towards capital this year, in addition to the 75,000 for the revaluation work. And so we still should have about 150 left.
Linda, anything?
I'll make a statement if you want. I think that the fact that this started out as a community project and folks really got behind it, supported it as much as they could. $60,000 is a lot to raise in the short period of time that they had to do it. And unfortunately, all nonprofits and everybody kind of lost out in the deal when everything crashed down. So I think that the community does support this. I'm thrilled that we can come up with the money and only have to ask to transfer the 125 at the meeting. So, I'm not a huge jock in school. I wasn't, but I live and breathe the Foxborough pride, and I think that it's very important that we keep up with that. And like I said, it's just, the fundraising that these folks have done, the work they put into it, and now the school department is behind them, so I will be going to support tonight.
Ginny, anything else?
Is the school department behind this, or is it the school committee?
Sorry, school committee.
Both. We have to both behind it. It's.
I understood that this was not a priority for the school department.
I think there were, at our, not last night, but at the previous school committee meeting, I think something was misconstrued, so I'm gonna explain it as it was said. That is not true, but it's taken a little bit out of context, so I'm gonna explain it the way we explained it a couple weeks ago, which is, this started as a community organization, and they came to the school department to see if we would help. With school department, I'm saying administration and school committee, we are one. So will we come forward to help support a community-based project? So this is a little bit unusual. Usually any project is sponsored by one entity and one entity alone. So that's not the case here. So community project has been going on for a few years. They're at the point where they either have to make it go forward or not because of the losing of the NFL grant. Came to the school committee and said, would we be willing to support the project going forward and kind of join together? So that's really what's happened. Without the time frame of the NFL grant, which only goes until May of this coming spring, what we said was, in an ideal world, if we were to have proposed this project originally, meaning originating with our idea, it would have been certainly better to work on our budget for FY14, get that passed at the Maytown meeting, have capital improvement plans solidified, which usually occurs in February or March, and have some idea of when we're moving forward with the borough project, and then we would probably then be, working on this. But that is not the way it happened. So we didn't originate this project. So we're supporting another timeline that was created by the community group. So what we said was, in an ideal world, that would be the order if we were originating this project ourselves. But we're not. So it is what it is. This is the time frame. The community's going to decide if they want to support it or not, if they have interest in going forward or not, which is why some of the money's coming from the school project, some is coming from the capital overlay. So, because this is a joint project, this is not the schools asking for another $125,000 to finish an idea we just thought up. This has been an idea that the community has been trying to accomplish for 4 years. So that is why it's going before town meeting, and because it is a joint community and school project. So it will be used by town youth groups, by the recreation department, by adult leagues, in addition to the schools. We're only one group that's going to be using this field. So We certainly had interest when they came to us because it meets a need we have for an on-site facility. The surface being probably secondary for us, whether it's turf or grass, was secondary to having an on-site facility. But the surface certainly does matter to us, because right now, being one of the few who doesn't have a turf field, when our teams compete elsewhere and they're on turf, there's two reasons why that puts our kids at a disadvantage. Number one is competitively, because they're not used to the surface, they have to get used to it. So we often, when kids are going forward in tournament play or something, you know, really important league play, we rent space on someone else's turf field to allow our kids to have an opportunity to see what the surface feels like, how does the ball move a little bit differently, how do you have to adjust differently. It can also, and this is, you know, not the first thing on the list, but it should be the first thing on the list. It could be a safety issue, because kids are playing on a surface they're not used to. And I'm not the athlete either, and I certainly haven't played anything on turf, but that is what occurs when the surfaces are different. And so for us, having an on-site facility is first, but also giving our kids the opportunity to practice and play. Right now, it might be just practice, but for some teams, it will be also play, is very important. So this was a joint effort that started with the community, 4 years old. It's either gonna move forward or it isn't, and that's why it's going to town meeting floor, so that the community can decide if they want it or not. So the school department has certainly partnered with the Turf's Up people, because we have a mutual interest, but it's a mutual interest with the entire town, not just with a few people. It's for our youth groups, for our rec department, for adults, there is going to be a group that oversees the use of this field, so that we all kind of get a piece of the field, and the time, and how that's gonna work, and how we're all gonna work cooperatively to be able to schedule the use of the field. So it's not a high school field, it's a community field. And that's one of the reasons why the behind the high school didn't quite end up the right location, because from a high school perspective, that would have been fine with us, because it's right there. But from a community perspective, it's not that accessible, it is hidden, some people had concerns about safety, being in an isolated area. So for the school side, front or back, would have worked great, because we need an on-site facility. But for the community purpose, with accessibility, being able to access from the IGO, from the booth, from the high school, that really turned out to have the best interests of the entire town in mind. So that's where we are.
Anything else, Jeannie?
Yeah. I mean, I've also attended the advisory committee meetings, and there have been a lot of questions coming up. And I've spoken to Jim personally about this, and my question is, and I mean, I understand the need for, I understand the desire to have a turf field. I understand that. But what I have a real hard time with is why it has to be at the high school and not at the Ahern. So, because at the Ahern, you have, all you would be doing was replacing the field. You have the bleachers in place, you have the commentary box in place, you have the lights in place. And one of the questions that the advisory committee said, is this a need or a want? And that's a good question. I mean, do we need a field or do we want a field? And specifically, do we need a field at the high school or do we want it at the high school? And in my mind, it's a lot more expensive and to the taxpayers if we put it at the high school rather than putting it at the Ahern School. And if the whole idea is just to provide a turf field for the kids to play on, then I don't see why the added costs of going up to the high school. I mean, it'd be very, very nice to have a campus school, very nice.
Okay,
But,
so I just,
You
a
know,
couple of
you
quick
just,
points, I guess.
but you just wonder in these economic times, and believe me, we're not gonna be getting the state aid that we have had in the past. I mean, the money isn't there. I mean, it's our, you know, so, I mean, I think we have to be, and plus, you know, we have other things. You have other properties, the school that's in charge of, you have the borough school. I mean, I heard the Taylor has to do things, you know, have things come, and those are things that are coming up. And so my question is, what's your priority? I mean, is the turf field a priority, or is it just something that would be very nice to have?
Okay, well, I think I answered the question about the priority, but I think a couple of things that are important points. If the possible locations that you saw was originated years ago by the Turf's Up group, schools had nothing to do with that. The consideration of the possible locations around town. Payson, I guess, was in the running for a while. I don't know. We weren't involved at that point. If the turf subgroup had come to the school department, school committee and us, to say, would we partner with them to simply replace the surface at the Ahern School, I can tell you, I'm speaking for myself, we have been less inclined to partner with them for a couple of reasons. Number one, our main problem is that we don't have an on-site facility, and kids and teams are traveling over there for practice, sometimes by us, sometimes they have to get their own transportation. It is an issue. So our interest was the on-site facility. To say that we're gonna get behind something that just puts a different surface at the Ahern doesn't meet the primary need of the high school. Secondly, we certainly wouldn't be talking about just $125,000 from the capital overlay, because the high school renovation money cannot be used for over there for the Ahern. So those are kind of the two major points of why this school department had interest in supporting this.
But couldn't the money that's left over, the $1 million that's left over for the high school renovation, couldn't that be returned to the town, and then the town do another warrant article for the, you can't take them?
No, it's a technical point, and I'll try to explain it very briefly. Those funds that are left over, the $1 million for high school project proceeds, those are bond proceeds that we received, and we borrowed under state statute, a 20-year purpose statute. Everything that you borrow for a municipality is under a specific statute that has a purpose life. So when we borrow for the high school, we borrowed under a 20-year purpose life statute. Athletic facilities are considered under state statutes 15-year purpose lives for purpose of bonding. And then there's another statute within those statutes that say you cannot take bond proceeds that you borrowed for a purpose life of X and then reappropriate them for a project that has a purpose life of less than X. And that's what we would have here. So you can't take 20-year, what is in essence 20-year money, and then go to town meeting and reappropriate them for a 15-year project as defined by state statute. So it's not an option to use these funds for another athletic facility other than a renovation of the existing facilities at the high school property.
Okay, but can't you use that for bonding for work to be done on the Borough School?
Sure,
or
you
Taylor
could
School
use
down
it.
the road?
You could use it for any other 20-year purpose. Either for, you can use it for two things. Something that is within the four corners of the authorizing article for the high school project, which was being proposed here is, or for any other 20-year purpose, which would be any other building that we would contemplate.
The other side of that is, so if we then were to, let's say, move it over to the Ahern, you're looking at about $1 million proposition to build just the turf field. We have about $250,000 in NFL and turf grants, the fundraising. We have to come up with $750,000. Where's that coming from?
We gotta start trying to move on. We got a public hearing at 8. Ginny, you have anything else?
Well, just, what we're voting, what this Board of Selectmen are voting on tonight is whether we support this going into town meeting, right?
For $125,000, Article 6.
Article 6.
$125,000, but really, if we're supporting that, we're supporting the project.
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
that's all we are voting on, whether we support this or not.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Lorraine?
One question, the $1 million, that originally, well, first off, I think what you described, Debbie, in terms of if we had the approach that we wanted to take in terms of doing the analysis, that would be the order, that we would not be going to town meeting on this right now, that we would be working through the budget.
If we were originating the proposal,
Right.
let's say there was never any turf subcommittee for the
Right.
last 4 years, and we suddenly thought about this, it wouldn't be what we go with now in
Right.
December, because
Right.
that's not the natural order of things
Right.
when it comes to the budget cycle.
And
That's what we meant by that.
Right. And so what I'm trying to understand is if there is a way for us to have the natural order of things happen in any way, shape, or form here, because, say, this $1 million, how long can you not, how long can you hold on to it so that we take the time, so that we can explain to the taxpayer, okay, these are our priorities. We have the town hall, the borough, the Taylor, and the turf field. Those are all priorities for the town. what's it gonna cost? Everybody, the entire community. And we don't know that right now, and that's my concern about supporting it the way it's laid out. And, I would hope that those are still our priorities, so we don't lose the value that has been given in kind or offered as a donation. Certainly, we risk losing the NFL piece, but everything else still stands. Can't we still move forward with that?
I'm not so sure everything else does still stand.
You would have, to explain, Debbie, you've also got services provided by other companies in kindness that would probably be retracted at that point in time. I think if this thing goes belly up at this point in time, I think it's the end of it.
It's not supported.
If it's not supported, I think it's the end of it. I think everybody goes their own separate ways.
I think it will be supported. I believe it will be supported at the town meeting. What I'm saying is, can't we support this through the regular process?
Well-
And while we risk the NFL piece, go through the logical process that we typically do go through.
The logical process, though, Lorraine, is, as you know, we started, the school committee took some excess funds from the end of the year budget last year because we had a great utility year, and we actually started the process on the borough. That's a multi-year process just to get to the cost on the borough itself and to be able to go forward. The Taylor, therefore, is years behind that in which to go forward. So we're talking, if you're talking about the normal cycle and you want to put it in the order of those type of things, we're talking about potentially looking at a turf field probably 5 to 6 years from now.
Okay.
If that's what the community wants to do.
Or more.
Again, we're not the ones making the judgment here. We're basically giving the community the offer and saying this is what, we can do as a community, and this is how we can do it. You're for it, we're behind it, you're against it, we understand, we put it forward.
Even knowing like all the combined needs that are there though, and coming up with a plan to roll it out, why would you have to hold the turf field up for 5 years?
Well, I guess my question is, how would we be able to roll forward, to your point, without doing those other projects first? Or even if I knew what the price tag was on those, I won't know on the Taylor until I go through a whole study, an analysis of cost, figuring out what the major issues are. Like I said, we've only done the first round on the borough, and we're not even through the initial investigation, so I don't even have a number on what the borough is gonna cost at this point, but we've isolated what the issues are. So we're starting to pull that all together. But, again, we're quite a ways away from being able to start even
I
coming
think
up with
the other
numbers.
point too is, this is a community field. And we keep, I keep hearing discussions where it's still like, why is the school putting this forward over the time? That's not the way it is. This is a community field. I can tell you that we're not gonna put forward a project that affects all the other, groups in town on our own. I mean, that is not what is going on. So this is a community project that we have come forward and agreed to support jointly. So, it doesn't, it's like when I said, in the ideal world with the natural cycle, but it is an hour cycle that we're talking about here. So this is not the schools suddenly taking something and moving it up the line. It's just not. It's a community effort, and we are here to support it, because the alternative one would have been to say, no, we're not gonna work collaboratively with groups in town and with the other agencies and departments in town that want this field. That is not the way we are. We always do. So to the detriment, I guess, of how people are perceiving this, we are in partnership with the town and always have been and always will be. So when a community group that's worked this hard comes forward and says, what do you think? Do you have mutual interest in this? We are a collaborative group, so we said yes. We'll come forward. So, that's the way it is in the town, and I don't see anybody who could fault that.
Okay, we need to start moving on. Lorraine, anything else? Okay, is anybody, Linda, you have something to say?
I was just gonna make a motion.
Okay, hang on 2 minutes, please. Anybody from the audience have anything to say? Please approach the mic, state your name.
The mic's not gonna work, you're gonna have to come up here.
Yeah, I better relinquish my seat.
Oh, it's on the table. All right, you can
George, have a seat.
have a seat, George.
Have a seat.
You got.
George Leonard,
try
3
to-
Aldrich Road. I'm still very confused as to one main thing. We have heard last year there was about $1.5 million left over from the school renovation project. Now we're talking $1 million.
Well,
If this project is voted on by the town, is the balance of that reserve zero?
Yes.
Pretty close.
All right, now listen, listen, George, don't keep leaving and coming back, because I only got 6 minutes.
Okay, but
Okay,
the
listen,
fact remains is-
listen. A lot of the other money was used for updating other things in the school, ceilings, lighting, exactly all that.
I have no
I
qualms with
would
that
think
at
you
all.
would know that. I
I
thought you would.
normally know that, I'm positive of it. My only concern here is that we hear a 15-year life for a capital asset that's going to be used, and that the monies can only be used for a 20-year life. So I don't understand how this money can somehow be renegotiated when the town has never even voted to have this project. This project wasn't
that's
even
you.
on
All right.
the agenda.
And Randy will directly answer that question right now.
Short answer, the only time when the issue comes up between this being borrowed under, 20-year purpose life is when you have to reappropriate it. But if you're renovating assets, within the scope of the article that was voted at town meeting, that aspect does not come into play. Certainly, there were assets that were renovated within the high school that don't, all have 20-year lives or longer, but that's the purpose, because on average, that's the purpose life for the, for the assets that were renovated in, on average. That is the life that's the statute references, but you just can't reappropriate it for something that's less than that. But you can use it within the context of what was, of the warrant article that was voted, for other things that might be considered lesser purpose lives.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess it's my turn. I think this is very comparable to when the library came forward and asked for money from town meeting to go through a planning process. And then they went through the grant process, and they ended up getting a significant grant. Was it $6 million?
About 3.6 million.
Okay, back in the day, and nobody ever thought that was going to come to fruition. And that group came forward, another great volunteer group in the town of Foxborough, a town that's built on volunteerism, as you can see in this room. And they got the support of the town overwhelmingly for all the effort and hard work, and basically got half the money. This project may not be half the money, but it's similar to a third, or 26%. Randy, you probably have that exact number for me, don't you? I think it's an asset to the community. I think it's been a long time coming. And I never gave much thought about artificial turf, because back when I played ball, and I don't think there was such a thing. But I think the surrounding communities, Franklin has 4, is that correct?
Most have more than one.
Okay. Once again, we may be a town that's very fiscally conservative every year, but it's time to catch up a little bit, in my point of view. The other thing is, in answering to you, Jenny, I think Jimmy, and they explained that if we put it at the Ahern School, we're losing a field. This is gaining a field. And I kind of find it very odd that we don't have a football field at the high school. I think in the future, the infrastructure will follow by another great group of volunteers that'll come forward. I also think that the infrastructure at the Ahern will be dated soon. That will be needing quite a bit of attention. Those bleachers are only certified for so many years, then they have to be totally inspected and recertified, and they fail, and they have to be condemned and rebuilt. So that's going to fall in line with this in the future, I think. I like the location at the high school. Now that it's clearly explained to me what's going to be done, I think the school department is trying to use the assets that they got at town meeting in the same scope, and that's exactly what they're doing. I also think that the town will support this. I think it'll probably be overwhelming in my point. I think it'll be over by 2/3 easily, because the children in this town deserve a little bit better than what they have now to utilize. And when the kids have to practice from the high school and go all the way to the IGO field, and then to be bused up the street, it's getting a little old. And there'll be some long-term cost savings there in transportation. And I just think it's something that I really strongly support, and I hope people do come out of town meeting and support it. So, and I hope it moves forward. And I think $125,000, that's all that's gonna come out of the town, on top of the cost, I agree. there's other money that could be used for other projects. But you know what? One small step right now, because we can't take any big steps, obviously. We can't do $8 million buildings we've been trying to do. Let's get rid of a small step here, a small thing, and then we'll move forward to the big thing. Because, there will be more money. Times will get better. They have to. So I'll entertain a motion.
So I move that we support Turf's Up and the Foxborough Community Sports Project at the Foxborough High School, warrant Article number 6, sponsored by the Foxborough School Committee.
Second.
Any other discussion? All's in favor? Aye. All's opposed? 2-2. Okay. All right, moving on.
Thank you.
All right. Different perspective from that side of the table. Nice job.
All right, we got 2
Discussion.
minutes.
Thank you.
We got it in time, we have 2 more minutes to go.
Can I take the 2 minutes just to thank everybody that came out on Saturday, that made donations to the hurricane victims down in New York and New Jersey. It wasn't very long before that common was filled with bags and boxes and people and just everybody wanting to help. We probably had $3,000 worth of gift cards and cash donations alone, let alone a 26-foot truck filled to the brim, front to back, top to ceiling, that took off. And the second truck is a 24-footer, which is 2/3 full, that should be arriving in Toms River in about an hour because they're stuck in traffic right now. But it just brought back a lot to me of that's exactly what Foxborough is. And I know we've gone through some rocky roads in the past year, but I think that the healing has begun in this town, and that regardless where you stood on certain issues that came up, this brought the town back together again, and it really was overwhelming. And I personally like to thank everybody that contributed in any way. And those folks down there are truly, truly appreciative of anything that they get. If you get a chance to watch the video that Chris Long put together on the photographs from down south of us, you wouldn't believe the photos and what those people are living in. So when you're at Thanksgiving Day game, on a turf field in Mansfield, and then at your dinner table, think of those folks and put them in your prayers. And I thank, and we'll pray for everybody in this town too, because it was really heartwarming. It really was.
It was a
It's my
beautiful
2-minute
day.
speech.
And special thanks to Bill and Chris Long, that long drive all the way down there after that. And I think what struck me was, I was kind of concerned it was just going to be a go into your closet and get all your old crap and bring it over. But a lot of people, and I know a lot of them, they don't have a lot, and they bought gift cards, they bought a lot of new stuff that was there that came out of their
Mittens,
pocket.
Yeah, cleanings, everything. Anything you can imagine, these folks were thinking of. One lady had gone to Benny's to pick up charcoal, because we had mentioned charcoal and charcoal grills. And there was 4 people in line at Benny's getting charcoal. So she wasn't able to get charcoal there, but it rang a bell with people, and, and somebody's gonna have a warm meal instead of something out of a can, so.
Yep. And even the trucks that went down, Larry Stern paid for the gas, paid for all
yeah.
the stuff in the truck, so it was very, very heartwarming.
Yeah, and Dale with his little pickup truck that was filled, the back bed of it was filled with pet food, so all you pet lovers out there understand that the pets are being taken care of too, so, very nice.
Very good. All right, it's being 8 o'clock. We have another public hearing scheduled. Do you want to read that, Lorraine?
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, November 20th, 2012, at 8 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, pursuant to its licensing authority in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws annotated, Chapter 138, Sections 23, 64, and 67, and all amendments thereto. The purpose of the hearing will be to review and discuss information concerning alleged violations of Chapter 138 that occurred at the CBS Scene Restaurant, 200 Patriot Place, Foxborough, Massachusetts. All interested parties are invited to attend.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening. You doing, Lou?
Oh, you're good.
Want her up?
No.
Jim.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Kevin, welcome, everybody. Kevin, we read the article, the legal notice, so I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Council's here for you, Mr. Chairman.
And if you could, Lou, if you could just introduce yourself for the people at
Louis
home.
Cass, Special Counsel for the Town of Foxborough. I've talked to the attorney for the licensee, and we've agreed that he'd stipulate that there was a violation, and we have a joint recommendation on a penalty.
Okay.
I have the officer summarize the report.
Yeah, please, thank you.
How you doing? On September 27, 2012, under the direction of Chief O'Leary, conducted an alcohol compliance check at the licensed liquor establishments in the town of Foxborough. Prior to conducting the compliance check, a letter was hand-delivered to each establishment notifying them of the upcoming compliance check, and also an article was written in the Foxborough Reporter on September 30th, August 30th. Both the letter and the newspaper article outlined the changes that we were going to do during the compliance check, in which the underage operative would use a valid Massachusetts ID, which clearly identified them as being under age 21. On the night in question, around 9:30, the underage operative entered CBS Scene under the watchful eye of an undercover police officer from a different department. The underage operative went to the bar at CBS Scene. The three bartenders were there, were watching the football game, not paying attention to her. I don't believe there's any other patrons in the bar. She then went over to where the bartenders were and asked for a Bud Light. One of the bartenders went over to the draft section, asked if she wanted a small or tall, and then poured her a Bud Light draft, which he then proceeded to give to her and place it in the bar in front of her, and then went back to watching the game.
Thank you. And just for the record, if you could just introduce yourself, just,
Sergeant Richard Noonan.
okay, thank you. Okay, Attorney Cassis?
Attorney Mitchell-Moore represents the CBS Scene.
Good evening. My name is John Mitchell-Moore. I represent CBS Scene. Rob Christensen is here. He's the manager. First off, I'd like to let you know that the client takes this very, very seriously. They are as upset and angry about this violation as I'm sure the police department and the board is. What they have done in preparation for this was every alcohol server is trained under the TEAM program, which is the Techniques for Effective Alcohol Management, that's the acronym. And that's an NFL program that was founded by the NFL to work in the stadium and in other restaurants in these areas. Also, when the letter was delivered, Mr. Christensen personally, at two separate staff meetings, went over the letter, made sure that the people were paying attention and heard it, and he informed them that this was not a joke, that it has happened before and it was going to happen, and wanted them to be extra vigilant. Notwithstanding that, a veteran and trusted employee either wasn't paying attention or was distracted or, quite frankly, may not have even given a hoot about any of this stuff. And that's very, very frustrating. What they've done, what they're going to do again is that they are going to retrain everyone under the TEAM program. The other thing that they do, and I've got a copy here for everyone, 15-point document that every server has to sign. And basically, most of them about serving underage people, but some of them about serving overserved. But basically, it's just another example of how seriously they take this whole process. The other thing is that the server was immediately fired because it was everyone was aware that this was going to happen, and they have zero tolerance for any violations. There's an expression, when I was in the Navy, there was an expression, you can make something foolproof, but you can't make it sailor-proof. And I think that this is, and I think all of us who have been in business know, unfortunately, that can happen. You can train people, you can supervise them, but there's an occasion when you just turn your back for 30 seconds, and someone gets distracted, or they get lazy, or they just don't care. And I think that this is what happened here. It's clearly not an institutional neglect, I don't believe. It was just a neglect of one individual. And unfortunately, the employer, not the employee, is the one that suffers here. What our recommendation is, and I've talked to Mr. Pecos and the Chief O'Leary and to Mrs. Cassis, is that we would agree to a letter of reprimand and the waiver of the appeal and the payment of the costs, whatever they are. And the other sanction would be similar to what you did with the Showcase Live. There would be 3 nights when they would close the bar early, 2 hours early in this case, not 1 hour like they did the Showcase. So on Sunday, December 2nd, Monday, December 3rd, and Tuesday, December 4th, rather than closing at 12:30, they would close at 10:30. The Sunday night, again, the Sunday night football games and Monday night football games are a big draw up there. So this is not just just a formality. This is something that is going to cost them some revenue. So I think that, and under all of these circumstances, I think it's our mutual belief that this is a fair disposition, a fair sanction.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Cassis?
Both the chief and Kevin Pecos were impressed with not only the contrition of the licensee, but also the plan going forward, and we thought the recommendation and the agreement was a good one. I would recommend that you accept it.
Okay, thank you. Open up for the manager. Would you like to say anything, or I don't want to cut you off?
I think the attorney covered everything.
Okay. Open up for the discussion with the board. And just so you know, this is a public hearing, so we will listen to people if they want to speak from the audience following our discussion. Linda?
Well, again, there was violations in '08, so I know it's over the 4 years. I think that you came in before us when you came over as the new manager, correct?
Yep.
I think that we explained how important it is, and that I probably didn't want to see you sitting up in this chair unless you were going to hand over the ropes or something fun like that. It's concerning. I understand that, you want to do the, that's being recommended for the letter of reprimand, as well as, an early close on a Sunday, Monday, and a Tuesday in December, which I'm sure it'll be busy up there with shoppers and et cetera. I'm glad to hear that you had to let that person go. And I guess at the direction of our attorney and the chief of police, as well as the town manager, accept that. So I'm disappointed, obviously. And I hope that you do go by all these procedures and and that everybody signs it, and when they sign it, they can recite it to you. You know, I mean, there's certain things that just, you know, take the time. I mean, you know, I've seen the girl that was in there, and I know I'm an old lady, but I certainly would have questioned her age, so. I want to go on and on.
Okay, thank you. Ginny?
No, I'm all set.
All right.
Just a question. So with the letter of reprimand, does that mean if there were to be a future violation, that's considered the second
Oh, well,
violation?
it's definitely a violation, so
Okay.
if there's another
Just wanna make
violation,
sure.
it'd be the second, third, whatever number it is in the line, and plus the rollback is really equivalent of a day when you take the hours.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for taking the steps that you have.
Mark?
I can't listen and read at the same time, the sheet you passed out. Is the scanners on? Are you gonna be implementing scanners?
We own a scanner. We got the scanner prior to me arriving in 2008 in conjunction, the chief oversaw the purchase of the scanner that we have. It is not the newest of technologies, but we are using what we currently have while we are considering the implementation of something updated.
Great, thank you. That's it.
So you're using a scanner now?
We are on busy times and busy days. So event days at the stadium, right now, on a Thursday night when this took place, just weren't busy, and we don't have somebody manning the door that would be utilizing the scanner in that location. So it's up to the service staff to do their job, and
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Now, and since you brought up Showcase Live, that's the question that I had, and they basically said they'd get back to us. We had another establishment, thought that was a great idea, and they went ahead and bought the technology. And I understand, Attorney Mitchellmore, that it's human error, but having a scanner gives a lot of comfort that human error does not happen as frequently. And I think I voted against when they said they wouldn't do the scanner. And to be honest with you, I don't know if it was cost or liability or training. But I think I would want to insist on using the scanner. You have it. The money that you're spending on attorneys and what have you, and closures, pales probably comparison to what it would cost for a scanner. Unless I'm missing something, why wouldn't you just say, we're going to invest
The scanner's
it?
there, it's just a matter of staffing it. It's just, I think the report said that it was 9:30 on a Thursday night and there was no one in the bar. So then that was, but the other thing about a scanner is that the plus side, it's a labor-saving device. When people come through and they can just show the scanner so people aren't, like in the old days,
Sure.
doing one of those. So they use it when it's practicable, but if there's no one coming into the bar, it's pretty hard to staff a person at a desk at a scanner.
When we are using the scanner, we're employing security that is utilizing the scanner. So we hire private security, and they handle the scanning at the entrance of the restaurant.
So it's not something that you can just put at the bar as a mobile unit, put it there, and then the bartender just simply goes over, scans it?
It is mobile, but you still would have
You've
wait
got multiple
staff.
bars.
It's just from different areas. It makes it's complicated. It's best to be used at the door. That's why we're investigating what else exists and what might be more beneficial moving forward. But in the interim, we will put the current technology that we possess into use.
Okay. And before we turn it over to the public, if there's anything to say, can you just roughly, you're saying a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or the specific date?
Specific, December 2nd, December 3rd, and December 4th.
Okay, and just so everyone's clear, I don't know if you have all copies.
That's a Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, yep. And where it's, understand the other one was in '08 or '09, but '08, so it's, the grace period of 3 years has passed, so this is first year. So first violation, according to the Foxborough's rules and regs on the liquor, letter of reprimand and/or suspension up to 3 days or both, and optional with liquor closing hours of 11 p.m. for 10 days. So with that said, anyone from the public want to speak? If you could just, is that microphone working now?
No, we can pull this one up. Yep.
Go.
It's David Brown, 17 Merrigan Way, and I guess I kind of have questions and comments as I listen to this. And what I'm hearing is they're going to close 2 hours early on probably, and maybe the manager can correct us, but what I would think of as their slower nights during the course of a week, particularly the Monday and Tuesday. And I did hear the statement about, I think, football games and things, and I would suspect by 11 o'clock, football games are pretty much over. So my thinking is that this really isn't much of a penalty in terms of into the back pocket. That's my comment.
The Sunday night, and Monday night football games go on considerably later than that. I haven't made the end of one yet, so.
They start at 9, so they're in full force at 10:30.
That's halftime, actually.
Quite often they're done by 11:30. Well, you're not shutting off the liquor at the stadiums by then, well, if it was in Foxborough. I just don't think that those are necessarily, the best nights. I would pick, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Get into a busy night, so there's it has some force behind it. You described, I think on Thursday night, it was a Thursday night when this happened. If I remember right, I heard something about the bartenders being distracted watching a game Thursday night, and the business was slow. So I don't know. It's just my observation.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Any more discussion from the board? Okay, motion made to close the public hearing.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the hearing is now closed. Further discussion from the board?
Well, David has a point, but I'm going by what the chief is kind of okayed and our attorney has advised, and if we're in agreement.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just a reminder, and we're very sensitive to what David said earlier, and when we talked to council, we're very cognizant of the fact that the board is very serious about enforcement and wants to see realistic punishment as a deterrent and a message to other bar owners that this will be taken seriously. The bar has hired counsel, and that cost a substantial amount of money. They have agreed to cover our costs, which typically is associated with this between the police officers' counsel would be somewhere in the range of $700, $800, $900. That's a fairly significant cost. And then there will be a loss of revenue on those, particularly on the 2 football game nights. So, what you've been doing is a day. Frankly, we thought that 3 nights reflected probably about what a day would be as well. So, the important thing for these findings, from the point of view of the chief and I think Lou agrees, is that it is established and uncontested that there was a violation. That's the first violation. Provided the bar learns from that lesson and there's no further incidents, great, that's the whole point. So the idea isn't to issue punitive punishment, it's not to be harsh, it's to make sure the lesson is driven home and to be sure that it's on the record and there's no opportunity to contest it at ABCC. That way, strike one is on the record, no contest. That's the important thing, frankly.
Thank you. I have a little, when you look at our regulations, it's a suspension up to 3 days, or closing early for 10 days. Closing on a Tuesday night doesn't sound like much of a hardship, and granted, you don't want to, go overboard, but a Thursday night where it was a night that it happened during a football game is a little more important than a Tuesday night, or even a Saturday night would send a little bit more of a message. I don't know many people that go out on a Tuesday night that it's going to.
Everybody's home watching us, Jim.
Yeah, maybe. Consideration for a Saturday night, a Sunday night, and a Monday night versus a Tuesday night. Was that discussed? Not being in the room when you guys were going back and forth.
Jim, if I was to understand it right, it happened on Thursday night, but there was nobody in the bar. So that would leave Thursday night, even though Dave had suggested Thursday night, that would leave that out. I would think a Sunday and a Monday are two of the,
Yeah, we thought Sunday, Monday were
the harshest
the
day.
heavier nights than,
It's not a normal establishment, like where a lot of people die and everything. It's more of a,
it's a football night.
yeah.
It's a sports, yeah.
The young lady she was the only person at the bar on Thursday.
So I don't know if that would be much of a penalty.
Can't imagine if you go back on Tuesday, there's gonna be a big crowd there either.
Well, I would think
I think
didn't you
Sunday,
say
Monday
Sunday,
were
Monday
were
was
the
the
bigger
thing.
days.
So, but I'm with you.
You don't have much activity like on a Saturday, like Jim
I don't, I really don't know. So
It's
busy.
Saturday? Is there much activity in the bar on a Saturday?
Well, there is, but there's also, you know, the suspension will also affect the restaurant. Okay? And there's a restaurant, so this isn't just, this is a little bit different than, for example, the bar Louie, although they do serve food there, but this is you know, for the lunch and a dinner crowd, and then there's the after-dinner crowd. So there's you know, there's three separate entities here that if it was a day suspension, that it would affect all of those times. But the Saturday night, I think, is a busy time. Not as busy as some of the other places, but it's not as busy as, say, Toby Keith's or the Bar Louie. But it is, you know, there is activity, and there will be activity. You know, in December, there's going to be some shopping activity, which is going to be different than a warm night in the summer. So I think that, again, I think that the Sunday and the Monday are certainly significant nights, and the Tuesday may be some sort of significant night.
Okay.
The Tuesday be more significant than a Saturday?
No, Saturday would be more, I mean, I think that's pretty, you know, there would be more people there on a Saturday than.
But I think to Kevin's point, we're not trying to rake them over the coals here. We're sending a message. If they come back again and it's something like that, I believe, I take Attorney Mitchell Moore for his word. If he says they're busy on Sunday and Monday night, it's a football crowd, I take him for his word on that. Maybe Tuesday is a bonus for him, but it definitely sounds like it was better than Thursday. And it is a busy time of year, shopping, so, I mean, we can pontificate over what day it's gonna be all night long, but I think to matter of just, you know, speed things along, I think under advisement of council, town manager, Chief O'Leary, I think since it's really considered their first violation, we just move along with it and just send the message over the bow, as they say in the Navy, John, and hopefully it doesn't happen again, because next time it won't be as easy. So, if,
I just had a question. Did CBS ask for early, for extended hours on New Year's Eve or
They asked for extended
number?
openings, but not serving hours, I believe what it was.
Okay,
You're talking about CBS, not,
CBS scene. That's who's in front of us.
we don't have a request in.
You didn't?
We did not.
Okay.
Oh, well,
Did you?
Okay.
I know you're
So,
always very critical about your motions. Oh, Mr. Pecos drafted a motion.
Oh, wow.
May I, Mr. Chairman, make a motion, or do you want more discussion?
I'd like to have more discussion on the Saturday, because I think Tuesday
I think
is,
you have a motion already, don't you? No.
No?
no motion yet,
Sorry,
Kevin.
I thought you did.
I just don't see the sense on doing it on a Tuesday, and I don't, you know, to go in a direction where it's over punishment, I don't think you're gonna get there by moving a Tuesday to a Saturday. And I just keep going back to, the letter was sent, you know, the person that was there looks like she's a young teenager. Doesn't get any simpler than that, you know, it really, it's almost laughable. So, you know, going to a Saturday versus a Tuesday, I don't think it's a hardship.
What about Fusion? What,
Yeah, one of the issues, Mr. Christensen reminded us, one of the things that they do on Saturdays is they do have a lot of private functions that are booked. Sergeant Noonan's reunion party was there,
I didn't go.
My daughter went. But they do have, Saturday night is almost completely booked.
For the rest of the year, a lot of corporate holiday parties and, you know, they're on the books already and contracted.
So it is a lot like,
We're a lot like Showcase Live.
Yeah.
We're gonna-
And-
You know, once again, what you do for one, you kinda gotta do for the other.
well, that's what I was wondering about Fusion. What did we do? Didn't we do like 3 days? And was that there first?
On the last two that you had, the three you had last week, you did a 5-day on Bar Louie's, but that's because it was in the nature of a second offense. Now, granted, they were just outside the window, but it was, the board regarded it as a second offense because it was within a time frame. On the Showcase Live, because they don't have, they're not a bar, they're not a restaurant. They only open when they're having a
Right.
function.
No, we didn't.
You couldn't pick a date, because if you picked a date, then they simply wouldn't schedule a function that night, and a sanction would be meaningless. So what you settled on was you
Right.
left one function at the discretion of the chief, and you had them close an hour early, which is a substantial loss of revenue, because you're talking a good-sized crowd for that, the maximum amount of time of the function. Then you closed an hour early on New Year's, which again is a substantial cost, because presumably that's a special opening night for them, and that will be a substantial loss of revenue, because it's a large crowd times an hour. The intent being, using those 2 nights to approximate a day. That's what we were trying to go for.
That was for Showcase Live, right? I'm trying to,
And the
So,
third one,
and-
Mandarin, you didn't act on because you didn't have counsel, and that's back
Right.
tonight.
so it was Bar Louie. What about Fusion? Was Fusion,
I think Fusion was 3 days.
was,
I think it
We
was
had
3
two.
days.
2 events that we considered the
Oh,
first.
that
it
was,
was like the 25th
Two
to the,
event-
to
There was
the,
2 events that we, 2 separate dates that we decided
Merged
not
into
to,
one.
not to treat it as a second offense, which would have got you over 5 days.
Mhm.
So,
They went for 3 with the
yeah,
one.
that was 3 days for two separate sales to minors.
no, actually,
they were for after
serving
hours.
after
After
hours.
hours.
Right, okay. So it was a little different than this.
So you had probably, in
So,
that case,
Bar Louie
a-
had 5 days?
Correct, but that was a second.
Second offense.
Just beyond.
It
the
was
window
just
of the
beyond,
second
okay.
offense.
Is CBS Inc. going to come in for an extension of the New Year's Eve?
I just
one hour?
asked, yes.
Oh.
just-
Any more discussion? Do we have a motion?
You got it written down?
No, I don't anymore.
You don't have it written down?
Nope.
I move that we, suspend the alcohol license, it's here somewhere. Was it December
Second.
for CBS Scene for,
Second, third.
the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, from 10:30 till 12:30? Or closing?
10:30 to closing would be the right way.
10:30 to closing. And,
Letter.
No,
What?
Letter of reprimand.
and the letter of reprimand will not be disputed.
no appeal?
Well, no appeal, not to be disputed.
All
I'm
conditions.
sorry, my words on.
The other 3 standard conditions are that there be an agreed determination of violation, that
Pay the
there is no
fees.
appeal, there's agreement, no appeal will be made to ABCC, and the town's costs associated with the hearing tonight will be offered to the town as a voluntary gift.
Second.
Motion made by Linda, second. Further discussion from the board? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Half hour.
Same idea, just.
Oh, it is, okay. We read the legal notice last week, right? We did.
Yes.
Yeah,
First
okay.
time.
All right, so is representatives from Mandarin? And just So, no, this hearing was scheduled for the last meeting. We read into the record the legal notice, and then we made a motion to keep it open until this evening. And we had suggested or advised the owner to seek legal counsel. Welcome.
Yes, my name is John Skirchak. I'm an attorney for the Mandarin, and I have an office in Norton, Massachusetts. I've known the owners, et cetera, of the restaurant for a long time. With me is Mr. Wei Guan, who's the holder of the license. With regard to the scenario of the happening, basically the establishment admits that there was a violation and understands that you can find against them. The bartender on the night, this is a small establishment, it's not, I don't know if you've all been there or you understand the facility, but it's a small establishment, et cetera. They don't have a lot of bartenders. Basically, Mr. Wei and Dave, the bartender in question who was working that night, are the main thrust of serving the alcohol. They've been through training, they understand the situation, they've reviewed it many times, and based on the distractions, et cetera, that happened that particular night, there was a mistake made. They understand that there's going to be a recommendation. I believe if it's the same that we discussed, the establishment will go along with it. Mr. Wei just would like me to indicate that no action has been taken of reprimand against the bartender. He's not trying to hide anything, et cetera. But Mr. Wong, the bartender, has been there for 10 years. And they've never had a violation in the facility in 10 years with either Mr. Wong or Mr. Wei serving the alcohol. The recommendation, they're willing to accept and to accommodate the board and do anything reasonable.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Officer, we will summarize the report.
Please, thank you.
On September 27, 2012, I conducted an alcohol compliance check under the direction of Chief O'Leary. Prior to the compliance check, a notification letter was hand-delivered by a uniformed police officer to the Mandarin, and also an article was published in the Foxborough Reporter outlining that a compliance check was going to be conducted in the near future, and during this compliance check, the underage operative would be using a Massachusetts valid ID for under 21 driver's license, which clearly states their subject's date of birth and also the date that they turned 21. On the night of question, the underage operative entered the Mandarin at approximately 4:15 p.m., went to the bar. The bartender asked if he could help her. She produced it. She asked for a beer. He asked for identification. She produced her under 21 identification. The bartender looked at it, brought it over to a light to look at it further. The telephone rang. He answered it, hung up the phone, then went over, handed the ID back to the operative, asked if she wanted a Bud Light, and which she confirmed that she did. He then took a Bud Light from the cooler, opened it, and placed it in front of her and walked away. A short time later, the bartender came back and then questioned her about her age, stating that you were born in 1992, are you 21? At which time the underage operative said that she was not. He then took the beer back from her and apologized that he could not serve her.
Thank you. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, when Chief and Council and I met with Council for the bar, circumstances in this case were a little bit different than the previous one. In this case, there was a mistake made, a violation occurred. There was fairly quick recognition that there was a problem, and the bartender came back and removed the beer. Now, there is a violation, no doubt about it, but there was clearly recognition made in a very fast manner, and the situation remedied. So I think it was our collective opinion that a harsh punishment, something on the order of what you just meted out to CBS scene, is probably not justified, in fairness, in the sake of consistency. So, you know, I think we were thinking initially about a day, and frankly, it seems more like a night would be more appropriate given the discussion that you just had, something like that. I think a day to deprive the business of, they have both a very active lunch business with liquor and dinner, and to deprive both, probably would, I think, be demonstrably harsher than what you just did. This business has a 10-year clean record, so something like a night, and I'm speaking off the cuff. I don't want to speak for the chief, so I think you should hear from Ed as well, because we haven't had a chance to go over this one.
Chief, do you want to come up?
We had a conversation, as Mr. Pecos indicated, with council for the people, and I feel that what was recommended by Kevin's very appropriate for a business that has operated for 10 years without any infractions or any significant even calls for service down there. I think that is an appropriate thing, because the intent is to encourage compliance, and I believe that all the establishments have learned from the experience, and moving forward, we've got something now on the record that does raise the stakes for them.
Thanks. Chief, can I, just so I can put it in perspective, when someone says we've been in business for 5 years or 10 years and never had an issue, you never know if you have an issue unless you've been tested. How often do you test a business such as this? Yearly, if at all?
At least yearly. Sergeant Noonan stays up to date on these matters to try and have different people involved in the compliance checks, and to do it in a rigorous manner so that we're getting 90% of the facilities, during their operation.
Okay, so if someone comes in and say, we've been in business for 10 years, roughly, they've been tested, could be 10 times?
I don't know.
I'm not looking for
Go
specific
back
numbers, but
that
I don't,
far.
yeah.
But at least we try and do it every year.
Okay.
To, again, using the methodology that Sergeant Noonan outlined.
Okay, thank you. Discussion from the board? Start with Mark this time.
I've heard enough already. Thank you.
Wayne?
What time in the evening was discussed for starting this?
I think, what time is starting, to close, starting at, what time in the evening to close them?
6.
Well, yeah, so, something like that sent the message and, is, serves the purpose of denying the income from the dinner crowd and the liquor that's associated with that.
Thank you.
Ginny?
No, also.
So, well, they don't, just like all of them, they don't have to close, they just can't sell liquor, correct?
Serve food.
Right, so, and I'm assuming a letter of reprimand?
Yes.
That wouldn't be appealed?
Yes.
Would that be?
We agreed to that.
Restitution and
And
gift.
restitution for the
We also
officer?
agreed with the other terms.
Yeah,
Okay.
public hearing.
I don't know.
We'll talk about a day, I would think would be, what day. I'm open, whatever I don't think it deserves to be Saturday or Friday.
No.
By any means. I would think, on this side, I would pick a Tuesday.
When everybody's home eating Chinese food, watching us, Mark. And that's okay, see, so you can get it to go and you don't lose any business.
Amazing how we click after all these years.
That's it.
All right, we can finish discussion.
Anybody from
Where
the-
it's a public hearing, anyone from the audience? No? Anybody?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Linda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Further discussion from the board?
Ready to make a motion, it's allowed.
Okay.
Make a motion that we, put a letter of reprimand to the file for the Foxborough Mandarin, 369 Central Street, Foxborough, Mass, to have them give a gift to cover the cost of the police officers and attorneys involved to the town, not to appeal to the ABCC, and to take a liquor serving suspension on Tuesday from 6 p.m. to closing. And Tuesday, I would say, why don't we go with the 6th, I'm sorry, that would be the 7th December?
December 4th.
Is it the 4th, December 4th? I'm looking at November here, I'm sorry.
Yeah, December 4th.
December 4th.
I think we have a meeting that night, so get your Chinese food and sit at home. Watch us.
We recommend that you.
I second your motion, Mark.
Okay, motion made, seconded. More discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We got 15, I guess. 15 minutes. That's about 9.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Lou is conflicted out of the last hearing due to having a family relationship with counsel for the bar in this case, so I'll handle this one with you.
Okay. Do we have to wait till 9 o'clock? Because it's
Yeah.
a public hearing, right?
Public
No matter
hearing.
what.
Unfortunately, yep.
Want to take a couple minutes?
Yeah.
We don't have any action items, right?
No action items.
Okay.
Really can't discuss anything that's not on the agenda,
No.
so.
We'll just,
Why don't we
we'll
take,
be
Frank,
back
can we
in
take a
15.
15-minute break? Okay, all set.
That's the plan.
Thank you, welcome back. We had a short 15-minute break. We're on our final public hearing for the Bluefin Lounge at Bass Pro. Lorraine, you want to read the legal notice?
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, November 20th, 2012, at 9 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, pursuant to its licensing authority in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws annotated, Chapter 138, Sections 23, 64, and 67, and all amendments thereto. The purpose of the hearing will be to review and discuss information concerning alleged violations of Chapter 138 that occurred at the Bluefin Lounge, 1 Bass Pro Drive, Foxborough, Massachusetts. All interested parties are invited to attend.
And if you could just introduce yourself quickly for the record.
I'm Mark Stopa, representing Bass Pro Shops and Bluefin Lounge. I'm joined tonight by Jim Camerata, who's the manager of the restaurant, and Walter Grammer, who's the operations manager for the store.
Great, thank you. Kevin, you want to lead this one off?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. What we'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is have Sergeant Noonan give the board a brief description of the events that occurred, and then I believe council, pursuing some discussions we've had, has an offer to make to the board.
Thank you.
On September 27, 2012, under the direction of Chief O'Leary, I conducted an alcohol compliance check in the town of Foxborough. Prior to that date, a notification letter was hand-delivered by a uniformed officer to each establishment on August 3rd, and an article was printed in the Foxborough Reporter on August 30th, 2012. Both the letter and the article in the newspaper outline the upcoming compliance check, and also advise each establishment that during this compliance check, the underage operative would be using their valid Massachusetts identification, which identified them as being under age 21. On the date in question, at approximately 8:10 p.m., the underage operative entered the Bluefin Lounge, took a seat at the bar. When the bartender came over, he asked what she wanted. She responded, a Bud Light. He asked glass or bottle. She stated a bottle, at which time the bartender then proceeded to open a beer bottle and place it in front of her. The underage operative then asked if she could pay for the beer, at which time the bartender went over to the cash register, printed up a receipt, came back over to her, and at that time, he requested her identification, which she produced. He asked her if she was 21. She stated that she was not. At that time, he took away the beer and told her he could not serve her.
Thank you. Okay, so you guys met together and you have,
We have, Mr. Chairman, I think the record will show if you examine the documentation in front of you, and what Sergeant Noonan has indicated, that once again, you get a situation where there was a definitive mistake made, no disputing that, but fairly quick recognition in this case. And so once again, I think in fairness and in the sake of consistency, a standard packet of determinations along with a suspension of short duration would be the appropriate and consistent application of the board's policy.
If I may comment by way of explanation, not by way of excuse, what happened was that when the young woman came in and sat down at the bar, there had been another young woman sitting in that exact seat for some time period before. The bartender had reported, when questioned afterwards, that initially he thought it was the same person. And for those of us who have ever worked as a bartender, your tendency when you're behind the bar is you're looking at the bar to see whether or not there's a drink in front of someone. If you know that you've got a patron who's been there and you see there isn't a drink there, the question gets asked, what can I get you? It was when he keyed the transaction into the register and turned around that he first realized this is not the same woman that was sitting there before, and asked for the identification. Obviously, the procedures kicked in. He was able to recognize that she should be carded, and caught the fact that she was underage and took the beer back. Unfortunate, particularly unfortunate for him, because he was fired. He was otherwise a good employee and an asset to the operation of the restaurant, but zero tolerance as it must be. And I can report to you that the Bass Pro Shops, because Bluefin Lounge is part of the Bass Pro Shops, takes this very seriously. I've had communications with folks from corporate headquarters on all the way on down. Everybody's taking a close, or keeping a close eye on this to make sure that things are responded to correctly. And in addition, I can report to the board that in addition to termination of the bartender, a number of other steps have taken place. Mr. Camerata, who's been in the business for 40 years and is absolutely mortified that for the first time in 40 years, there's a violation. I suggested to him that he has to now start over again, but another 40 years might be a longer career than he's envisioning. But while I make light of that, it is not insignificant that this is a 40-year experience that he brings in front of the board. And again, it's unacceptable, and he's mortified that he finds himself here this evening. What he's done is he's re-reviewed all of the standards with the personnel. This is not a high-volume establishment. It's not a hotbed for underage drinking. It was an unfortunate human error, misjudgment, what have you. They have also altered their practices. It was before that if they thought someone was 30 or under, they would ask for identification. They've now increased that to 35. Now, and in practicality, I'm not sure what the difference is between somebody who's 30 and 35. But I think it makes the point, particularly to the folks who work there, that this is even more important. In addition to that, instead of just asking for identification, personnel will ask, how old are you? And then also ask for identification. And I think that's an enhancement that will reap benefits, because it's kind of like what they do with security at airports, is when you have that conversation, if somebody's going to lie simply by giving an ID, it's easy to hide behind that. But if you've also got to verbalize the lie, I think that's a much more difficult scenario. So I think that will help greatly in ensuring that mistakes don't happen again. Mr. Camerata has also attended the seminar conducted by Safe ID Check following this to just get the latest and greatest on what's going on in this area. Their practice has always been to have their folks tip certified. that will continue. So we find ourselves here willing to accept that there's a violation here. I know that that's important for the town, and it's important for my client as well, to just step up and say that they accept that there's a violation. Obviously, they'll waive their right of appeal. If there are costs associated, they're happy to gift that to the town, if the town will notify us what that is. And understanding what this board's approach has been recently, and it's unfortunate that there's this run of violations, and it's unfortunate we find ourselves here. A first violation for the Bluefin Lounge, and obviously a first violation for the manager who's been in the business for 40 years. We will accept a disposition similar to the one that had just occurred before us, and no need to reinvent the wheel. Would offer up Tuesday, December the 4th from 6 p.m. to closing as suspension time.
Thank you, Mark. Discussion on the board? Anyone?
This is, very, very similar to what just happened. Where it was, a mistake and it was, thought about and rectified fairly quickly, so, I would agree with that. I would agree with, what Mark and Kevin and the chief had spoken about.
Ginny?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Lorraine?
All set.
Mark?
Absolutely.
And thank you for being forthcoming with all of that. Anyone from the public? David?
I guess I just have a question and a comment. 6 to close, and what time do we close up the Bluefin? I know you're within the store.
8:30.
So it's 2.5 hours of no service, just so that you know that. And I suspect that the revenue from the Bluefin in relationship to the Bass Pro Shop store is minimal. So we're talking about probably minimal revenue to the store and no liquor for 2.5 hours.
No comment to that?
I don't have the data to be able to tell you. Common sense tells me that as against the store revenue, it's probably de minimis. I will say, however, that the Bluefin Lounge, while we have the operations manager for the store here, the restaurant itself is independently run, if you will. It's part of Bass Pro Shops, but it's run separate and distinct from the store. It falls under the umbrella of the operations manager, but they have to account to corporate themselves. They're their own entity. So while it doesn't seem like a lot, they're also not serving a lot. They're not generating a lot of revenue, so any loss of revenue is significant to their operation. So it's a kind of a sliding scale. I think ultimately there's fairness there.
Jim, motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, any more discussion for that? Motion made, seconded.
Second.
For any discussion?
Did I fail to
So you can
suggest that there was a
still-
letter of reprimand that was supposed to be part of that? It didn't make my list.
It's okay, they'll get
but
it, trust me.
I figured they would, but I didn't want us to leave that out.
Yeah.
Fine. All right, motion was made and seconded. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And discussion?
Make a motion?
Yeah, discussion.
With the violation that we just processed, their closing time is what? We did 6 till,
6 to closing.
and do we
Which
know
is
their closing time is at 10 p.m.?
5 hours,
they-
6,
I think
probably
it's
6
10 on a
hours.
Tuesday. Probably 10.
Who are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Probably reasonably, that probably
Sounds
equals
probably,
4 hours, 6 to 10, and tends to be that operation.
Yeah.
At least in terms of people being in there drinking, put it that way. There's still food being served takeout after 10, but in terms of people drinking, Chief, can you corroborate that?
On a Tuesday?
They wouldn't have a lot of people in there, based on the parking lot and the people that are sitting at the bar.
This establishment's a little different.
Excuse me.
Their dinner crowd, is it's not a destination four-star restaurant, it's more of a convenience and an amenity for people who are there shopping. So 6 to closing is essentially depriving them of the dinner crowd for a night. That's basically what the effect of this is. Whether it's an hour earlier,
That's what I'm just
whatever
wondering if it
it's-
should be like 5 to
I can
close.
concur with Lorraine an hour earlier, but.
I would suggest to you that, given the fact that we're offering up December the 4th, and this is the height of probably one of their biggest shopping times, where they have more volume of people in the store, that effectively 2.5 hours there is probably in excess of what the last restaurant would experience from their 4 hours not having increased Christmas shopping crowds and so forth. So I think that it is not insignificant that they will lose those hours, and that the net result is that they will be punished pretty harshly. And as I've already assured you, they take this very seriously. Again, I've talked with folks from corporate on down. Everybody in the pecking order has had a piece of this, and they're paying attention.
Linda?
I think that we should go with the 6 o'clock till closing, only for the fact that, it's called the Bluefin Lounge, which, folks might go in there just to have a drink and maybe a little something, but they might, have a drink while they're in the middle of shopping, whereas the Mandarin, they could go in there and actually eat some, he can still stay open for food, which I don't know that these folks will, but I mean, you certainly can stay open and just have food and not beverages, but I think the letter of reprimand without appeal and the closing from 6 till closing is fine.
Okay. And I think the other difference is, on this particular one, the bartender came back and realized a mistake and then
Right.
pulled it back. So it's not like, oh, we got you and told him he made a mistake. He found out on his own, so. Okay, further discussion? Anyone else? Someone want to make a motion?
I move that we suspend the alcohol license for the Bluefin Lounge from 6 to closing on December 4th, and with a letter of reprimand that will not be appealed, and that they will gift the town the money for, the cost for having our police officers here this evening,
and it agreed that there was a violation.
and agree that there was a violation admitted to it.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, further discussion. There's no attorney fees on this one, correct?
I'm sorry?
There's no attorney fees on this one, because Lou recused himself?
What we'll do is, once I get Lou's bills, we'll divvy it evenly somehow. I don't know exactly how we'll do that, but we'll figure that out.
Okay, so it's amended,
So-
it's the police and the.
Yeah, there is,
Any
because
any
there was-
fees?
There was work on preparation for the hearing until Lou realized he was conflicted out.
Okay.
He didn't understand that, I guess, till just late this
So
afternoon.
what I said,
Called me.
Diana, was any fees incurred by the town.
I just put town costs.
Thanks.
Okay, so motion made, seconded, further discussion?
I'm just going to not support it because I think there should be an additional hour to make it more consistent, because the other situation, they also recognized immediately the error that had occurred. So, I just think in terms of the impact, I feel like there's a little bit more put on them. That's all.
Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion carries 4-1 with Lorraine being the opposition.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks.
Thank you,
good luck.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Christine, have a good night.
Motion to
You
adjourn,
as well.
second.
Motion made, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Ooh, I forgot to say that. Yeah.